Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. It's another day in the trenches in the fight for American freedom. We're glad to have you here. Thanks for tuning in live. It's always great to see the crew who joins us right at the start of the show. I'm thankful to have you here. Don't forget, click that like button. And of course, if it's your first time watching the Wake Up America show and you end up loving it, just so you know, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time, 5 days a week, the Wake Up America show streams live. But we've got tons more stuff going on here than just the Wake Up America show. My wife, Stephanie, launched a new show, Hustling and Homemaking. This week, she does the Bear versus Man Challenge, which I think you guys would enjoy if you haven't seen that. Don't forget to check that out at apforlibertyshop.com. We've got a lot of great topics and, of course, some fantastic guests. Is the Republican Party becoming more isolationist? Well, Europe asked the question, some European nations asked the question back in February, whether or not the United States itself was becoming more isolationist. And I think that the United States definitely has a tradition of such. But what does isolationism even really mean? Before we discuss whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we're probably going to need to define our terms. And we're going to have to go back through history. So they say, I think it was an Eleanor Roosevelt quote, who said that average minds discuss events, good minds discuss people, and great minds discuss ideas. So today, we're going to discuss some ideas. What do you say, huh? Ding, 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 ding. So we'll talk about that a little bit this morning. That's going to be our headline piece. And the reason why I bring it up is because I saw an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal yesterday asking the question, is the Republican Party isolationist? It's complicated. Some lawmakers have other reasons for opposing aid to Ukraine, and the Reaganite caucus has to make better arguments to win them over. Fascinating. We'll have that conversation. And then when I was looking up isolationism in recent news stories, I found just dozens of articles from this year accusing Donald Trump of being an isolationist, accusing the Republican Party of being an isolationist, accusing the United States of going towards isolationism. So when I see the trend, I'm going to pick up on it, and we're going to talk about those ideas today. But first, before we do, I've got a couple of interesting stories. Rumble is suing Google for essentially acting as a monopoly. This is the second lawsuit filed by the video company against Google. Rumble first sued Google in 2021 for illegally favoring YouTube videos in Google search results and within its Android mobile operating system. So the lawsuit is currently in discovery after a judge decided against Google in its motion to dismiss the case. So it goes forward. We're going to talk about that this morning. Of course, we're all Rumblers here, aren't we? No? We are streaming on many platforms this morning. We try not to neglect people on different platforms. Some of us actually watch us over on our locals page as well, where we stream live and where you can get early access to our content, like Stephanie's Hustling and Homemaking videos. So we'll talk this morning a little bit about that. And then I saw another great piece on the WSJ question mark, what's on TV? For many Americans, it's now YouTube. Speaking of, people spent nearly 10% of their TV viewing time watching the service, home to videos by creators like Mr. Beast, says Wall Street Journal. Oh, yeah. Well, what about videos created by Austin Peterson? Duh. So interesting. I mean, I cut the cord years ago. Maybe more than a decade ago. There was a very brief period in my life when I actually paid for cable television, and I don't know what I was thinking. I must have been flush with cash, but we'll discuss that a little bit this morning. We're glad to have Matt Unruh, Joni Rankin, Robbie Theriman, Quest Fanning, Mommy, the lovely Blue Trike, In Jam, Andy Opperman, Liberty Shindig, all joining us over at Rumble. We're suing Google, ladies and gents. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you very much. And it's not to say that we don't get a little audience over on YouTube. We do get some people over there. I think Dash Rendar joins us over there on YouTube typically, and we get a few other people joining us as well when Rumble kind of poops the bed. At 8 o'clock this morning, we're going to speak to Camellia Peterson. Miss Teen USA stepped down, citing that she couldn't handle the stress of the crown. Fascinating. Well, you would think that the runner-up would be more than happy to step up and take the duties, but apparently the runner-up in the Miss Teen USA competition doesn't want the job. What's that movie from the 90s that they played clips of it in that little montage of early 90s movies that I played just for the intro this morning. But Drop Dead Gorgeous. Have you ever seen that movie Drop Dead Gorgeous? It's got Denise Richards in it, and it's, oh my God, it's about the pageant queens. It's one of the funniest movies ever made. If you've never seen, I think Kirstie Alley's in it too. If you've never seen Drop Dead Gorgeous, the film, definitely you have to see it. It's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen about a fictional pageant contest. Well, we're going to talk to Camellia Peterson about this Miss Teen USA pageant and the problems that are going on. Why wouldn't the runner-up want to take it? Why did the one who won step down? Are you ladies? Are you doing okay these days? You seem to be struggling. I know it's all men's fault. Don't forget, you can text the show today at 573-319-1586. Again, the text lines are open, and you can send us a text and let us know what's on your mind at 573-319-1586. You've also got the number up there on your screen, but I highly recommend that you send me a text there and just share it, save it on your phone. One of our listeners, I think it's Don. Yeah, Don McMurdo joining us typically in the mornings. He's usually kind of quiet in the chat, but he sent me some text of the Aurora Borealis from all over the country. Alaska. I mean, Alaska, it looks like just a beautiful purple and blue oil painting in the sky of the Aurora Borealis. Did you get a chance to see it? Last night and possibly tonight should be the last couple of days that you might have a chance to see it. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about it. And if you have photos like our friend McMurdo, you can send us a text and I can take a look at some of those photos and enjoy them. Go ahead and send us in a text at that number you see on the screen. Share it on your, and I'll try and share it with the audience if I get a chance today. Okay. At 8:30 a.m. Central Time, we're going to have an in-studio guest. You love to see it. Missouri State Representative Tony Lavasco joins us live. It's the last week of the Missouri legislative session. Every year, Tony carries the same bill to try and legalize brass knuckles, and it never seems to make it through. So Erd's mommy, she'd like to see the pictures of the Alaskan. I got to be careful about how I do this so that I don't dox the guy who sent them in. But let me just take a real quick snapshot here for you so you can see the pictures. I mean, this is in Alaska. Take a look at this. Look at that beautiful, absolutely gorgeous sky. This is in Alaska. And I have to take the picture away for a second so I can bring up the next one so you guys don't see the phone numbers of the people who are texting me. Just one moment. And let's look at this. Look at this beautiful site. This looks like something I would have made in AI to share with all of you on the show for like a background for my thumbnails. Look at these. This is gorgeous. This is a real photograph. I believe he said it was in Fairbanks, Alaska. Beautiful night sky with the Aurora Borealis. Absolutely beautiful. Don't you love it, Erd's mommy? I know. Isn't that so cool? Absolutely gorgeous. Hope you guys are enjoying that, and I'll try and share with you some other pictures you can see here. This is a lovely yellow and orange and green and purple. Absolutely beautiful what Mother Nature has to share with us. There we are, the Aurora Borealis. Did you have a chance to see it? Cotton candy sky, as Quest Fanning says this morning. Good morning, Quest. Nice to see you all. This week, I think you guys are. Oh, look at Andy Opperman just humble bragging over there. He's on Kais Island. He posted a picture of him, and he's out there drinking Jeffersonian Java this morning on the beach. You lucky son of a bitch. He says, I never realized the Aurora would be anything other than green. Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I don't know much about the Aurora Borealis, but if you got a chance to see it and you took some pictures, feel free to send them in at 573-319-1586. Again, the text lines are open at 573-319-1586. All right, so at 8:30, we're talking to Tony Lavasco about the end of the Missouri legislative session. Okay, sound good? Okay, let's finish this story. Rumble suing YouTube. Give it up for Rumble. They're fighting. I mean, they're doing everything they can. to create an alternative to the tyrants over at YouTube and Google who don't like it when people like you and I share our ideas or our speech together. As many of you might remember, it was a little bit less than a year ago when the Wake Up America show got demonetized on YouTube. And when that happened, we lost a significant portion of our revenue. And of course, have been working very hard to do things to sort of buttress the finances of the Wake Up America show. You know, when we talk about like being in the trenches for podcasting, the only way to survive in this business is to have multiple different revenue streams. And, you know, since we're not the biggest show in the world, I mean, we're working our way up and we are getting bigger. You know, I have to build blocks of revenue in different ways in order to maintain the finances of the show. So if something happens like $1,000 camera breaks, then I can go buy a new one and I don't have to worry that I'm not going to be able to eat or pay my rent this month, right? So what we do is we set up, a way to make money on Rumble, a way to make money through monthly sponsorships, the locals community, the Wake Up America Show's merch shop, right? The AP for Liberty shop. And then hopefully if something happens, and I also write weekly columns for news magazines. And the hope is that if any one revenue stream goes down, that we have the other one to step in. Well, Rumble stepped up in a big way, and I owe them a big debt of gratitude because when YouTube pulled monetization, they said you can still upload your videos, you just can't make any money off of them. And I realized that I really need to be investing more time and energy into a platform that won't do something like that to me. Rumble is not going to pull the rug out from underneath me. But even if they did, I should be okay because while Rumble constitutes now a fair amount of the revenue that comes in for the show, I do have other revenue streams if any one goes down. So, and that's just what people my generation have to do. Millennials, about age 40ish to about maybe 15 years below us. Most of the people who are in the job market these days who aren't working for some big corporation are gigging it like I am. Ever since the pandemic, more and more people have started to start their own LLCs, their own S corps or C corps or what have you, in order to survive because it's just the job market is a nightmare. And you go and you work for a pittance for a person who tells you that when they hire you, oh, we're all like a family, and then they treat you like anything but. So at the end of the day, we're all doing what we can to try and survive in a world where there's not going to be any pensions for people like ourselves, right? The only way to survive is to get as rich as you possibly can so that you'll be able to afford to live to be an old person because
how dare you?
That's just what it is. Levin 214 says you can basically say what you want over here on Rumble, which is good, but they don't seem to want something that works as well as YouTube. I'm sure it's a big challenge to program a site like this. Levin 214 says you still can't subscribe via the app. You have to do it on the browser. That's true. You can make Rumble rants, however, on the app, which reminds me, this week's theme for the bonus content for the Wake Up America show is celebrities who are libertarians. And yesterday we did Kurt Russell. Yeah. Who will be today's? I don't know. Well, yes, I do, actually, because I produced it. If you'd like to see today's bonus content, find out about another Hollywood libertarian, then make sure you get those Rumble Rant donations in now. And you can do it on your app. So get those Rumble Rant donations in as soon as you can so that we can unlock the bonus content today and you get to enjoy that instead of regular commercials. I know you guys are not necessarily the biggest fan of commercials, right? But they do keep the show running on time, and they help me to go and go backstage so I can go and get a guest and bring them out for you. So if you'd like to see today's bonus content instead of typical commercial breaks, then do us a favor and get those Rumble rants in, or you could go to ap4libertyshop.com. I see you guys are talking about the delicious coffee. I'm drinking some delicious Benjamin's Franklin's Electric Elixir this morning, and I absolutely love it. It's got a little bit of kind of a hazelnut note to it. So if you haven't tried that one, make sure that you do. Our coffee has at 4.5 stars all the way up to 5 stars in our reviews. People love it. I got a message from someone yesterday who left us a 5-star review of the Jeffersonian Java, and she said that she was skeptical when she first tried it and because of the price, and then remember free shipping. But when she actually got it and she tried it, and then she's like, oh, she kind of got used to it. And then when she put like the kind of like regular, like big box store, cheapo brand in her grinder and tasted it, that's when she really noticed the difference between the taste of what Founding Flavors is compared to your regular store bought coffees. I know that I can't compete with Target or Walmart or any of those big box stores on price. So I don't try. So my strategy is to just find the best coffee in the world and sell it to you at a price where I can actually make a little bit of money. So that's what the Wake Up America show has done. And if you haven't tried our Founding Flavors coffee, make sure you do so. Andy Opperman just unlocked the bonus content in one fell swoop. Damn, Andy. Why wait? Roll that beautiful bonus footage. I know you guys are excited to see it. I definitely will do that in a little bit less than 10 minutes. Andy, I'll play the bonus footage. I want to get through this story real quick and I'll roll that for you. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate you all very much. You're helping to keep the Wake Up America show live and alive. And Joni Rankin's sending me DMs on the DL. What you doing over there, Joni? Sliding into my DMs this morning. What is this? Stormy Daniels' testimony is as synthetic as her implants. Oh, that looks like a good one, Joni. I'll pull that one up and play it for the class in just a few moments. We're glad to have you here.
How dare you?
How dare you? How dare you? I will play that clip. Joni, I appreciate that. No, it was a good catch that Bill Maher had of Stormy Daniels in the web of lies. Tell me sweet little lies, that he got in her testimony. You know what was funny too? What was it that the Babylon Bee did a headline on Donald Trump where he said, Donald Trump explains to jury, Stormy Daniels was actually way hotter back then. All right, but before we get to that clip, and I just pulled it up. Thank you, Joni. I appreciate it. You rock, guys. I love the audience of the Wake Up America show. Yeah, it's awesome when we've got like 2,000 or 3,000 people watching. It makes me happy. But I mean, even with like the 169 people watching over on Rumble, we always have a good time. It's nice and fine. All right, so let's finish this story about Rumble. The new lawsuit that Rumble filed was filed in the Northern District of California, the same jurisdiction in which they filed the first one. The complaint alleges that Rumble would have received billions in ad revenue if not for Google's anti-competitive conduct in the ad marketplace. Rumble was a publishing client of Google's until it built its own ad tech stack a couple of years ago, 2022. The complaint in the lawsuit filed by the CEO, Chris Pavlovsky, reads, Google exploits significant conflicts of interest that stem from its multiple roles in this electronically traded marketplace. As a result, it is able to pocket a I love that word, supra competitive portion of every advertising dollar that passes through the ad tech market it controls. Ad revenue that rightly should have passed through to publishers like Rumble and its content creators, people like me. Well, thank you, Rumble. The lawsuit also alleges that Google abuses its monopoly in ad tech to illegally disadvantage Rumble as an ad tech competitor. Google unlawfully forecloses competition in the market for publisher ad servers in the market for ad buying tools for small advertisers and in the separate markets for ad exchanges and ad networks. This is kind of like insider baseball for those of you who aren't on the this side of the business. They say that Google excludes competition by engaging in conduct unlawful under antitrust precedent, including through unlawful tying arrangements, a pattern of exclusionary conduct, and even a market allocation and price fixing agreement with Facebook, at one time its largest potential competitive threat. So Rumble's ad marketplace revenues are still small, but the company sees its ad tech and cloud product offerings as a growing part of its business. Their full year revenue last year was $81 million. The vast majority of that revenue that Rumble brought in came from Rumble selling ads against the user-generated content on its platform. So when you watch a commercial that plays whenever you come to the Wake Up America show, those commercials is the majority of Rumble's the $81 million that Rumble makes. And I'm actually sort of proud of the way that you and I, the listeners of the Wake Up America show specifically, have also started to create this new revenue stream through the bonus content because we're actually contributing to the success of the Rumble platform. Because your donations, for example, Andy's $60 donation, a portion of that does go to Rumble, and I don't mind sharing revenue with them. I do kind of mind sharing revenue with YouTube. They take a little bit more over there, and they could snatch it away at any moment. So I'm glad that we have kind of staked our claim in Rumble, and we're actually helping Rumble to grow. And I'll tell you this, that the fascinating thing about Rumble is that yesterday I saw that a transaction had gone through. Rumble actually does a profit share with their creators. And I'll tell you, for me, because I'm not huge, right? It's not a whole lot. So yesterday I got an ad revenue, a profit share yesterday that was like $160 that would be placed in my payment for this month. But the great thing about it is that I didn't have to do anything to earn that check. The way that worked was that when people come and they watch the Wake Up America show, if they actually purchase products, if they click through an ad when they're watching the Wake Up America show and they make a purchase because they watch the Wake Up America show ad, well, Rumble actually kicks back some of that profit back to their audience. And at least to my understanding, I've never seen anything like that on YouTube, that you get some kind of a profit share. Maybe they do with their big creators on YouTube, but not with like super tiny small creators like myself over on YouTube. So Rumble actually cares about their creators enough to make that kind of a sacrifice, especially because, in terms of big tech, an $81 million revenue for a full year is not a lot of money for big tech. So Rumble is still kind of like the new scrappy kid on the block. And that's why, the fact that they went out of their way to help the Wake Up America show be successful, and they've been putting us on the front page and helping us to grow and making us a part of their partner program. I'm really thankful that the Wake Up America show listeners are so generous. And I know that it's because of how I cajole and ask and build content for you that is worthy of monetization. But I'm glad that we have this platform in Rumble that's a competitor to YouTube, these anti-free speech platforms. We actually have a free speech platform. And like InJam was saying earlier in the Rumble chat, yes, it's not perfect. Yes, Rumble does have bugs, but it constantly is being improved. There have been consistent, gradual improvements in this platform. And that's why I'm glad that we are both investing in it. I'm investing my time and my energy. You all are investing your Rumble rants and your time and watching advertisements through Rumble to contribute to it, because it's going to take all of us working together to build a parallel economy to compete against big tech, which hates you and I, hates our ideas, hates our culture, hates our lifestyle, hates our belief system, hates our religions, hates our gun, that we cling to gun. We're bitter clingers to guns, for example. So I'm glad that we have this competitive channel that we can actually speak to one another freely. So congratulations to Rumble and good luck in the lawsuit. Love to hear your thoughts on that one. All right, I got to play this Joni Rankin clip just because it made me laugh so much. I did see this. I'm glad that you reminded me of it, Joni. So let's go ahead and play it here. This is good stuff.
If this one doesn't work, and she's a bad witness, because let me show you a little video. This is when I had Stormy on in 2018, and first I asked her why she had sex with Trump. Listen to that, and then listen to what she says after that, and then we're going to talk about the trial, because it's quite at variance of what she said to me in 2018. Why did you fuck Donald Trump?
I have no idea.
Okay, but you say it's not a Me Too case.
It is not a Me Too case. I mean, I wasn't assaulted. I wasn't attacked or raped or coerced or blackmailed. They tried to shove me in the Me Too box to further their own agenda. And first of all, I didn't want any part of that because it's not the truth, and I'm not a victim in that regard.
That's not what she's saying now. She's talking about he was bigger and blocking the way. It's all the Me Too buzzwords. She said there was a power imbalance of power, for sure. My hands were shaking so hard. She said she blacked out. Blacked out? She's a porn star. I don't think sex...
That doesn't mean she's been subjected to the likes of Donald Trump. I might black out too.
Do you really think she blacked out? I mean, a porn star is used to having sex with people she does not know. That's the job. It's kind of like Stormy Bob Stormy. Fuck. Action, and let's go, and we're losing the light. So I just think she's not a good witness, and this is.
Yeah, nice, Billy. You guys see this new Remy video over at Reason.com? Fortnite federal employee version. Great stuff.
Federal employees are not returning to the office.
Now, taxpayers are on the hook for federal office buildings that are barely being used.
Department of Veterans Affairs supervisor caught taking bubble baths on the job.
Temporarily sent away, but they forgot to come and get me. A barely functioning bureaucrat, nobody noticed my new aesthetic. COVID's still a thing, though that won't keep me from midday soul cycle. Meeting with our agency, expect to see 3 blank screens and Michael. 'Cause every fortnight I am in the office. One day it is so hard working. Every other Monday I click leave on doorstep, but the Grubhub driver rings my doorbell. I want to kill him. All my mornings are Sundays stuck in an endless commissary. If you ever try reaching us, the effects are pulmonary. And my phone rings, it's ruining my life. I'm sick and it's ruining my life. We come in one day every fortnight. You come in one.
Fortnight's every 2 weeks, by the way, guys. So he's saying that the federal employees only come into work once every 2 weeks.
Day every fortnight. 'Cause every fortnight I am in the office. One day
Every fortnight I'm in the office. One day it is so hard. He's a federal employee because they caught all these federal employees not doing jack, not coming into work, taking bubble baths when they're supposed to be at work.
so
This is Remy from Reason Magazine. If you guys have no idea who he is.
hard working. Every other Monday in my backyard I have uncooked burger patties on the table. I want to grill them. I tried calling you, but you don't pick up. Another fortnight lost in America. I tried calling you, but you don't pick up. Another fortnight lost in America. I tried calling you, but you don't pick up. Another fortnight lost in America. I tried calling you, but you
Good stuff. Good stuff. You can watch the full video over there at Reason.com or on their YouTube channel this morning. Good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's nice to see you all here today. Hope everybody's in a good mood. If you're not, you will be by the end of the show. I notice a small quantity of likes to a large number of people over there. Click that like button if you do. If you will, we'd be glad to have you join us on our regular schedule, Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. We're going to have the bonus content now before we get, when we get back. It's time to talk about, is the United States becoming more isolationist? It's the big story, the big ideas. We'll talk about those when we get back. Enjoy the bonus content. Hollywood libertarians. Which one will today be? Thank you to Andy Opperman for unlocking it. And we'll be right back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
We are looking at celebrities with libertarian instincts. Today, we examine Vince Vaughn, a big fan of Ron Paul, who interviewed about libertarianism with Playboy. Vince Vaughn, known for his acting, shares his libertarian views in a recent Playboy interview. He supports the Constitution and believes in a republic. Vaughn takes about Ron Paul, who woke a lot of people up to the fact that government can't handle everything for you, his distrust of centralized power, and his preference for a system where people are left alone, unless they commit fraud or physical force or take someone's property. So we should have lawyers running the country? Interviewer David Hochman asks in response. Laws and courts are important, Vaughn explains. Otherwise, you can't leave your house because you have to protect your stuff. Vaughn admires Ron Paul for his role in enlightening people about governmental limitations and the dangers of centralized power. I have gotten to know Rand through Ron, and I have found him to be very consistent on a lot of the issues where liberty is concerned, and liked him very much, Vaughn said. There are some things I wasn't totally understanding of regarding Rand Paul's politics, but he is the candidate that is currently running that I am most sort of aligned with in sort of his thoughts and philosophies. Discussing gun ownership, Vaughn connects it to the necessity of self-protection and property rights.
Okay, looks like the bonus content is freaking out this morning. What's going on there? I'm sure there's supposed to be a lot more in there. Sorry about that, folks. Here's what I'm going to do. When we go to our next break, before Camelia joins us here in about 30 minutes, I'll see what I can do to try and fix the bonus content. As you can see today, it's Vince Vaughn, which is great. A Hollywood libertarian, big fan of Ron Paul. And Rand Paul, but for some reason, let's see, I'm going to, hold on, before I can, see if I can export that again one more time and see if I can fix that. So I'll try and get it fixed for you before we go to the next one, guys. Sorry. Levin214 says there's a lot more conservative A-list celebrities than they want us to believe. Problem is it's career suicide to publicly speak out. Yeah, one of the things that I didn't include in that little mini documentary, and hopefully the new version of it will get fixed so that we can actually see the whole thing, was that Vince Vaughn got in big trouble. He got a lot of heat from the media when he appeared at a football game and shook hands with Donald Trump. I mean, didn't endorse him, didn't come out and say he supports Donald Trump, just ran into Donald Trump at a football game, sat down next to him, shook his hand, talked for a few minutes, and the media raked him over the coals about that. Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau used to be like friends, best friends, and Favreau is strangely quiet when it comes to politics. That's because he's money, baby. Makes you wonder about his political beliefs. Yeah, you be careful. You know, that is the thing, because Jon Favreau has done a lot of Disney stuff. I think he wrote The Mandalorian for Disney. So if Jon Favreau is to the right of Joseph Stalin, then he's got to keep his mouth shut about it, because there's no way you can work at Disney, Marvel, make those kinds of movies if you're not a woke leftist. Joey Marv joining us over in the Rumble chat. First time you're here, Joey. Haven't seen you before. Welcome to the chat. He says, anarcho-capitalist here. Well, you are welcome, sir. We're glad to have you here. Hope you'll make us a regular stop on your morning tour. The Wake Up America show streams live Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. Be glad to have you join us on the reg. Some people say Brad Pitt is also a conservative. Maybe true. Helping Freedom says, can't wait for AP to lay the smackdown on Camelia. I wonder what topic it will be this morning. You will find out soon enough. Also, a little bit of a pro tip for those of you out there who are interested in growing your following on social media. If you use X, formerly Twitter, and you want to build an audience over there, and you kind of want to like get into the game social media wise, I want to say that I highly recommend Premium Plus, which is like their $22 a month service, the tier that they have over there. Paying for it, you get the blue check mark and everything. But there's a whole lot more that you get with Premium Plus, the more than just the blue check mark. You get their monetization program, so people can actually subscribe to you on X, and I think I've got like 15 like monthly subscribers over there. But they also have ad revenue sharing as well if you get posts that go big enough. But I just upgraded to Premium Plus. I was on like their lowest tier for a little while, and I upgraded to Premium Plus. And I will say that my account has actually been growing as of late. Whereas before it would kind of remain stagnant, and it must be that if you actually pay for their premium service, then you get put in people's feeds and you get a little bit more visibility. So, just a pro tip for those of you out there who are fans of social media or are fans of Elon Musk's X platform, which between Rumble and X, those are kind of like my two biggest platforms at this moment. So, if you're curious and about it, then to me, my anecdotal experience so far has shown that I'm actually growing for the first time, which is nice to see. All right. Next topic: is the United States becoming more isolationist? Let's have a conversation about it with our friends A.L. Wild, Ron, Sarah Sanchez, Physics Hypernova, joining us over on YouTube this morning. How are you, friends? So this whole conversation started because of this article I read in the Wall Street Journal opinion section, which of course didn't make me happy. Michael Allen and Ashley Berry wrote this yesterday. Is the Republican Party isolationist? It's complicated, they say. Some lawmakers have other reasons for opposing aid to Ukraine, and the Reaganite caucus has to make better arguments to win them over. Interesting. Many observers wrote off the House Republican Conference as isolationist when 112 of its members voted against supplemental national security aid for Ukraine last month. Give it up for the House Republican Conference. Wall Street Journal writes that the vote was a watershed with ramifications for the future of the GOP, but the story behind it is more complicated than the predominant narrative allows. Speaker Mike Johnson showed great political courage and tact in setting the conditions for Ukraine assistance to pass. He consulted with Trump and assured the package included the former president's preference that economic assistance to Kyiv be offered as a loan. Mr. Johnson aimed for a majority of the majority, but fell short, attracting only 101 of 218 Republicans. Now, the Ukraine supplemental passed without their support, with the support of 101 Republicans, along with 210 Democrats. Arrogant Lamb is already stepping on my applause line. He says, I think we need a strong period of isolationism to focus on ourselves. To some extent, I agree, depending on your definition of isolationism. How best to understand this Republican vote, though? First, consider the 101, the Wall Street Journal calls them stalwarts. I call them leftist liberals. These members are among the party's Reaganite wing, standing for a strong national defense and an assertive foreign policy. Still, there were fewer Reagan Republicans than those who typically vote for increased annual defense spending for the Pentagon. So I think it's a bit of a misnomer to call these people Reagan Republicans. It would be, I think, more in line. It would be more correct to call them Dick Cheney Republicans, or to call them John McCain Republicans. And the reason why I think that it's a misnomer to refer to these interventionist neocons as Reagan Republicans is because Reagan himself was not a neocon. Reagan was someone who was beguiled very much by the neocons, but who did not do the bidding of neocons entirely. He was embroiled in a conflict with the Soviet Union that he inherited, and he won. Did he increase defense spending massively? Absolutely, at the behest of who was the National Review Buckley, Bill Buckley, William Buckley, and many other neocons at the time, neocons that he had in his cabinet. And of course, his vice president, George H.W. Bush, soon to become President George H.W. Bush. But Reagan was much more skeptical about intervening in foreign affairs. For those of you who might be old enough to remember, the bombing of the embassy in Beirut, I believe, was in 1980. That would have been a year before I was born, but I do pay attention to history, so I know the story. Ronald Reagan, instead of increasing the amount of troops there, actually pulled out and decided against further intervention in Lebanon at that time. And that was much to the chagrin of his advisors and his vice president and the neoconservatives around him, who were telling him at the time that if you pull out, there's going to be a vacuum of power, et cetera, et cetera. And Reagan realized that we had bigger fish to fry And I think that even people at the time, you were writing at the time about Reagan, that this was some kind of an isolationist streak. My belief here is that these people who are writing in the Wall Street Journal, calling it the Reaganite wing, are trying to ride on the coattails, the legacy of Ronald Reagan and the good name of Reagan, because they don't want to use the name that what they really should be calling this, which is the George W. Bush wing of the Republican Party. It's the George H.W. Bush wing of the Republican Party. Just say what it is. It's the neocon wing of the Republican Party. And I don't like when libertarians try and call Ronald Reagan a neocon, because he was much more of a complex character than someone who was just, Genghis Khan overseas. Despite, again, being, very interventionist to a large degree, a neocon, really fits the T much more so in the George H.W. Bush school of conservatism. So I would invite you to consider that while I'm reading to you this Wall Street Journal piece talking about the Republican Party's quote unquote isolationism, that what they're referring to the Reaganite wing of the GOP, they're really talking about the Bush wing of the Republican Party, because Reagan was far more libertarian than George H.W. Bush or Dick Cheney or George W. Bush, for example. The Wall Street Journal says there were fewer Reagan Republicans, I'm going to just call them Bush Republicans, than those who typically vote for the increased annual defense spending for the Pentagon. Several factors explain the 112 no votes. According to one House Republican, 1/3 lacked political courage, 1/3 were sympathetic but didn't believe in the Biden administration, and 1/3 were hardcore anti-Ukraine isolationists.
Offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
The strict isolationists include a group of roughly 46 members who voted against Ukraine in May of 2022, when the shock of the Russian invasion and war crimes were still raw. Of these Ukraine irreconcilables, most voted against assistance for Taiwan too. They simply don't favor a dominant U.S. national security posture and were never attainable votes. So they say strict isolationists. The fascinating thing about this how they use this pejorative isolationist, is that if you don't want to invade every country in the world, if you don't want to fund every tin pot dictator against their preferred enemy, if you don't want to be involved in every conflict around the world, you're an isolationist. It doesn't surprise me that these people would lie about the position of these people as isolationists, when they are also lying about them being the people who were voting for the military spending as being Reaganites. No, Ronald Reagan probably would not have been a big fan of getting involved in the conflict between Israel and Gaza at this point, and he might have even pulled out. But of course, depending on the hostage situation, we do have American hostages there, so it's hard to say. It's hard for anybody to say what Ronald Reagan would have done. It's a completely different time. I'd be curious your thoughts on that. Perhaps I'm wrong. Send me a text at 573-319-1586. Now, the party's national security leaders, neocons, also sought the support of another bloc, veterans of the U.S. Armed Forces, or those who chose to fund Ukraine in 2022 and 2023, knowing many in this group distrust President Biden. The GOP's leadership added several provisions to gain their trust, such as requiring the White House to document its Ukraine strategy within 45 days of the bill's passage. Increasing oversight of how the aid is spent, and allowing the president to direct Russian frozen assets to Ukraine's coffers. But that wasn't enough. Members faulted the Biden administration for wasting time throughout the war, giving Ukrainians only enough weapons not to lose. For months, Mr. Biden refused to send high-mobility artillery rocket systems, then tanks, then F-16s, and finally Army tactical missile systems, as many of these 47 quote-unquote persuadables didn't vote for Ukraine. And of course, politics on Capitol Hill shaped the final tally. Mr. Johnson linked Ukraine to the passage of border security provisions. When Mr. Trump and the House Republicans rejected a Senate deal, some House members lost the political cover they needed to vote for Ukraine. One GOP representative echoed a familiar refrain when he complained to CNN that the Biden administration got everything it wanted in negotiations, and asked what Republicans were getting in return. Some commentators describe this group as the hope yes, but vote no caucus. Those who wanted to support Kyiv but didn't want to endure the political costs of doing so. Their hesitation was consistent with a decline in public support for Ukraine since the war began. Yes, the American people, the large majority of us, do not support this intervention and this funding for Ukraine. The anti-Ukraine votes increased to 112 on April 20th from 70 in 2023. So the amount of anti-Ukraine support, I guess anti-funding support, is growing in the Congress. And of course, that reflects public opinion here in the United States as more and more of us are letting our voices be heard about the fact that we don't want to be funding this war. And it strikes me as rather conspiratorial, a military-industrial complex plot to some degree, that the Biden administration would be sending them just enough missiles, just enough aid for them not to lose. Not to win, but just enough aid not to lose, so that what happens, of course, perpetual war. Right. So the Wall Street Journal continues on and says, even if the House GOP isn't dominated by isolationists, its failure to attract more support for a democratic nation under siege, democratic Ukraine. That's a good one, Wall Street Journal. Very funny. Those in favor of a strong national defense shouldn't take solace, for example, in only 34 House Republicans voting against military assistance to Taiwan. Taiwan is a very different situation from Ukraine, and it's wrong to link the two of them together. It's like comparing Taiwan to Israel. It's not the same thing, you idiots. But this is written by Allen. He served as a special assistant to the president for national security affairs from 2005 to 2009, and majority staff director for the House Intelligence Committee 2011 to 2013. And Miss Berry served as chief clerk of the House Intelligence Committee from 2011 to 2015. So neocon warhawks through and through, decrying the Republicans who voted against aid to Ukraine in accordance with the desires of the American people. Fascinating study this morning as I'm reading the news, and I Googled the word isolationism, pulled up 4 or 5 articles just this year. Europe worries U.S. isolationism is back, writes the Washington Post. This is what they say. The Republican Party's isolationist streak was a topic of concern and conversation as pro-West leaders met over the weekend in Munich. This was in February. Estonian Prime Minister Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina warned that the United States must not forget its isolationist past. Coons says that this was repeated in several bilateral meetings. Isolationism had disastrous consequences and should not be repeated. What? Isolationism had disastrous consequences. They're talking about the interwar period, in which that was a time period when the American people were broadly opposed to intervention in Europe, getting involved in European world affairs. And this is a time they called the United States isolationist. Of course, we still had trade around the world to a certain extent. We still had international trade. There was the Smoot-Hawley tariff that drove the United States into the Great Depression. But of course, leftists and big government neocons and big government Republicans, big government types will never admit that it was the Smoot-Hawley tariff that slashed international trade by something like 75%, which was explicitly responsible for driving the United States into the Great Depression. Oh, no, it was because we had too much capitalism. It was because we had too much free markets, and we were trading around the world, and it drove the world into a depression. It wasn't the Smoot-Hawley tariff that drove down international trade by 75%. It drove us into bankruptcy, and it wasn't anything like that. It wasn't the inflationary policies of the Federal Reserve in 1929, even though Ben Bernanke, former chair of the Federal Reserve, said to Milton Friedman in a speech, "You're right, we did it, and thanks to your help, we won't do it again." Oh, God, you know the damn worst part about knowing history, knowing that you're doomed to repeat it and having to watch everybody else force you to repeat it. It's so freaking frustrating.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No! No!
No. Yes. We're doomed and repeating it. And there's, I tried to stop it. And therefore, no one should criticize me because I did run for president in 2016. Thank you. Ah, yes, the Wake Up America show, brought to you by me and a whole hell of a lot of coffee. The Wake Up America show is fueled, and we don't run on Dunkin'. We run on Founding Flavors coffee, and it's absolutely delicious. It's like,
Look at her. She looks like she's 19 years old, sitting there with her, like a little lady with her legs crossed.
that's right. That's Betsy Ross's Liberty Lullaby decaf, like a little lady looking there with her legs crossed. Make sure you check out the merchandise shop at ap4libertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, ap4libertyshop.com. Yes, so European leaders and American senators going to meet in Europe, claiming that they fear that the United States is becoming isolationist again. And CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, that shadowy conspiratorial group that is responsible for the assassination of JFK to chemtrails. They wrote in February as well. Excuse me. They actually wrote in April of 2026, the last month, election 2024, is Donald Trump an isolationist? They say claims about, is Donald Trump an isolationist? Many articles come out saying flatly that he is. The New York Times writing that he is. The Atlantic, C-SPAN, Trump is an isolationist. A professor says Mike Pence warns that Donald Trump is embracing isolationism, for example. And of course, America First was the slogan of choice for those who wanted the United States to stay out of the war in Europe. Again, we're talking about the America First of today versus the America First of the interwar period. So for those who need to understand isolationism, what really is true isolationism? Well, when I mentioned the Smoot-Hawley tariffs that caused the Great Depression, that is an example of isolationism. Now, the foreign policy absolutely has a part to play in that. If the United States did not go abroad in search of monsters to slay and prevented any form of immigration and prevented any form of international trade, then it would be isolationism. Think Japan before Commodore Perry sailed into the Bay of Tokyo and demanded that the citizens of Japan open up their ports to international trade. So think, I believe they call that the Edo period of Japan. That's isolationism. No one can leave, no one can come in, no international trade, and we go not abroad in search of monsters to slay. We go not abroad in search of monsters to slay. So that is isolationism. Tariffs are isolationism. Not maintaining any kind of a navy over and having that navy operating around the world, that would be a form of isolationism. What these neocons call isolationism is our rejection of their imperialist foreign policy. What we reject as non-interventionists, I say libertarians who would like to see the United States be less aggressive in foreign military affairs, have a strong national defense, have a strong military, protect American merchant shipping, but go not abroad in search of monsters to slay, and do what we can to protect international trade, so that, because of course where goods and services don't cross borders, armies will. Camelia Peterson's going to join us live in 5. Miss Teen USA steps down, says she doesn't want the crown. Runner-up steps up. Hell no, she says. She doesn't want it either. What's going on, ladies? Is everything okay? We'll talk about that with Camelia Peterson when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to Wake Up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Is the outdoor your home about as exciting as a library? Then spice it up and unbore your space with our custom metal signs. Crafted with love and a bit of libertarian magic, you can customize your own metal sign at ap4libertyshop.com. So head to ap4libertyshop.com, customize your own metal sign today.
We are looking at celebrities with libertarian instincts. Today we examine Vince Vaughn, a big fan of Ron Paul, who interviewed about libertarianism with Playboy. Vince Vaughn, known for his acting, shares his libertarian views in a recent Playboy interview. He supports the Constitution and believes in a republic. Vaughn takes about Ron Paul, who woke a lot of people up to the fact that government can't handle everything for you, his distrust of centralized power, and his preference for a system where people are left alone, unless they commit fraud or physical force or take someone's property. So we should have lawyers running the country? Interviewer David Hochman asks in response. Laws and courts are important, Vaughn explains. Otherwise, you can't leave your house because you have to protect your stuff. Vaughn admires Ron Paul for his role in enlightening people about governmental limitations and the dangers of centralized power. I have gotten to know Rand through Ron, and I have found him to be very consistent on a lot of the issues where liberty is concerned, and liked him very much, Vaughn said. There are some things I wasn't totally understanding of regarding Rand Paul's politics, but he is the candidate that is currently running that I am most sort of aligned with in sort of his thoughts and philosophies. Discussing gun ownership, Vaughn connects it to the necessity of self-protection and property rights. Vaughn dismisses the idea of running for office, criticizing the influence of money in politics and the potential for corruption. Vaughn said in his interview with Playboy that, "You have to understand that America today is not capitalistic. The problem is corporatism. The government has too much authority, and it's dangerous. It stifles productivity and freedom and prosperity and peace. I find most people nowadays are more complacent or accepting that the government can successfully do everything for us. It can't. He critiques the current system, highlighting the problems of corporatism over true capitalism, where the government wields excessive power. Vaughn points out that government overreach stifles productivity, freedom, prosperity, and peace. He expresses concern that Americans are becoming too complacent with governmental control over their lives. Vaughn passionately opposes the Patriot Act and the government's involvement in undeclared wars and stripping away personal liberties. Vaughn said the Patriot Act? Let's get rid of it. Undeclared wars, doing away with personal liberties. Let's understand how that has worked out historically to see that it has led to some horrible things. Once our personal liberties are gone, when an American citizen can be pulled out of his house and detained for 6 months without a trial, where is our country? Once those rights are gone, how do you get them back? Once the government is allowed to listen to you, how do you get that privacy back? He warns of the dangers of losing personal liberties, referencing historical outcomes when governments overpower their citizens. Vaughn fears the irreversible loss of privacy and rights once the government can detain citizens without trial or invade personal privacy. Vaughn urges understanding and action against government policies that infringe on individual freedoms and privacy. My thing isn't necessarily to try and get out there and try to get people to join the movement, he said. I find it important to be consistent with what your truth is and to be direct about that in conversations. He said it's gotten him some praise on the down low in Hollywood. I have people come up to me because I have spoken about it, and they are always like, hush, hush, like, I am so glad you said something. I can't say anything, but I am with you. When pressed on whether libertarians should do more in pop culture to argue their cause, Vaughn said he isn't out to push his beliefs through projects. He calls for vigilance against government overreach, emphasizing the historical lessons and the importance of maintaining personal liberties. Vince Vaughn is one of the highest-profile libertarians in Hollywood and the world.
All right. Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. It's everybody's favorite segment, Make Camellia Blush. Joining us live on the show is Camellia Peterson. Hi, CJ.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I hope all of the mothers out there had a lovely Mother's Day, and however you chose to celebrate that.
Yes. Did you notice all the fur baby moms out there trying to make it all about them?
You know, I know they always do, and I was blissfully oblivious, so no, I didn't. And there might be a little something I haven't done in a while. There were some things that inspired me, shall I say, to go to the keyboard Sunday. And so there might be a retrospective of sorts coming out in the next couple of days.
What do you mean, a retrospective? What is that?
Well, I might have written a little something for the first time in a long time.
Okay. Good to
so
know.
We'll see in the next couple of days. Just keep your eyes peeled.
Good. Well, we're glad to have you here. We got about 465 people and climbing over on rumble.com. I imagine we must have hit that front page goodness. Welcome, everyone. I'm Austin Peterson. This is the Wake Up America show, and I'm speaking to Camellia Peterson. She joins us Tuesdays and Thursdays on the show, which means this show is more than just today. It's 5 days a week, Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. Camellia, let's hit the news. Miss Teen USA. Did you read the story about this pageant and all the weirdness happening around that one? Have you ever seen that movie, Drop Dead Gorgeous, where like all these pageant queens are competing and then they all start dying one by one? Oh, of course you haven't. You've got to see it. It's hilarious. We'll talk about it. Now I can't make any jokes or references that you will get. But what's the story of Miss Teen USA in New Jersey? She steps down and then the runner-up doesn't want the crown? What the hell?
I'm reading through this, and I will tell you, my first thought was that they still have these pageants. What network shows it? Like, what's it on? Does anybody even watch TV anymore? But apparently, Miss USA, Miss Teen USA is alive and well, and with plenty of drama to go along with it, probably as usual. So yeah, reading through this story I was a little confused as to what exactly was going on, because Miss Teen USA steps down and wants to give her crown back. The runner-up says, no, thank you. I want to respect her decision, and I'm not going to take the crown either. Apparently, the social media manager has also stepped down. So nobody seems to be very clear on exactly why, but, it's for mental health. And, they're all wanting to empower women and respect each other's decisions to take care of their mental health.
Okay, fine. Lot of jargon there, but the runner-up doesn't want the position. Something's weird.
Something is weird. And, one of the things that caught my eye was, so the young lady who is going to accept the crown, and I can't remember where she's from right now, she was getting so much backlash on social media for doing so, that her mother got on there and defended her and said that, she raised a warrior and, that she can endure all the hateful comments. But one of the things she said kind of indicated that maybe some of the reason behind this, and she said what they went through was nothing detrimental, apparently referring to Miss Teen USA and the others affected by this. And she said, yes, unfortunately, they may have had to ride Spirit Airlines. It's pretty bad, right?
Oh, man.
That might
Sounds
be fair.
awful.
And she said, and they may have had their boss tell them that some of their posts were not on brand. But if that was the worst, maybe they've forgotten that what their primary role was, and that was to be a role model for women.
Right. So the sources told the New York Post, where we got this story, that the women had been, quote, bullied by the organization's CEO. And so the bullying that they're referring to here is something like what he contradicted her once, or he didn't bow in her presence. I mean, What is this?
Well, and
bullying?
it is a woman. That's a little clear. It doesn't, so the CEO is a woman, and this seems to all come back to the social media aspect of things. It doesn't get very specific as far as what form the bullying took place. But I guess, they were making posts under their names, and that these two women who stepped down were removed from being able to post on, the Miss USA Instagram page. And so I think, the source added that, that Noelia wakes up every day on pins and needles because of harassing emails from the pageant organizer saying, don't do this, don't do that, take that post down, unlike that post. Of course, they can't like and unlike their own things. Can't speak to anybody, remember your NDA, don't go anywhere. So it was micromanaged, to the nth degree. And they felt like that was harassment.
Okay, so that's definitely not harassment. That's what you sign up for when you join these kinds of pageants and meetings and things. I never understood the mystique or the allure of these things. I mean, I'm like the next guy, and I enjoy the Victoria's Secret fashion show back when they used to have attractive women in it, but then they got rid of the pretty girls. So now, it is what it is. But I'm sure you probably don't either. But I mean, pageants, there's some sort of pathology that is surrounding these pageants. And I guess I don't understand what the allure is. I mean, did you ever do any pageants or anything like that, Camellia?
Spelling bees.
Spelling bees. You have to actually be smart for those things.
Oh my gosh, right?
What do you think about these pageants, Camellia?
I was thinking back, and at one time it seemed like there wasn't just the beauty aspect for it. I know that is the part that everybody pays attention to, and it's highlighted. But for a lot of these pageants, there was also there were other things that you had to show some intellectual knowledge, some depth. You had to show some skill in some area. You had to have skills other than your looks. I don't know if they still do this. One of the young ladies that was quoted in the article was saying that she knows that people look down on it disparagingly, but for her, it's not all about, her looks and everything. It's about the advocacy. And of course, she's created a nonprofit organization to help something. And I'm sure it's very noble. And everybody has one that does these sort of things. And it's highly debatable as to how effective their altruism actually is.
No kidding. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. It's nice to see those numbers on the rise. Thank you to rumble.com for featuring us on the front page today. Click that like button if you haven't already. And of course, the follow button as well. I imagine that for many of you today, it's your first time watching the Wake Up America show. So we'd be glad to have you join us regularly, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. If you click that follow button, you'll be feeling fine. You won't have a problem finding us for our regular schedule. Okay, well, if these pageants, these women, they know what they sign up for with these things.
Sure.
But it really is for women. I mean, because like for the most part, I mean, men don't go to these things. It very much is like a mother hen kind of a thing. But from what I've seen as an outside observer, it can be sort of dangerous, not just with like the typical anorexia or bulimia or fears about things like that, but just from the mental health aspect of these girls, because these mothers drive them into it, and they sort of exploit these girls. And there's a lot of the pathology comes from the mom, who probably feels like she got left out and she never got to do anything. So they sort of like project this mental illness onto their daughters, do they not?
Oh, 100%. Every mom, maybe not. Probably the majority, definitely. And this one of the things that may have been Miss Teen New York, maybe, that was talking about how that she had been doing this since she was 12. And now, in fairness to her, she is an economics major. So, she's not, she may be beautiful, but she probably is also smart. But she talked about how much work it was and how many milestones in her life that she missed out on training, for these pageants. And I don't know what that means anymore. If they do have to demonstrate something other than, their physical beauty, there must be some other element to it. But I think that if you are, organizing your child's life around something that is so focused on a very temporary aspect of their person, because beauty will fade sooner or later, although there's technology is probably making that easier to keep. But yes.
Now, there's, getting more deep into the pathology of these things. There's this talk in, right wing red pill communities about the delusion of many modern women, not all modern women. Certainly, you are excluded, and so are the lovely ladies who watch the Wake Up America show because they're smart because they watch this show. Obviously, princess mentality. Right. This idea, this entitlement, this sense. Now, obviously, if you go into the pageant and you lose and you get crushed and your dreams are destroyed, might be a good wake up call for you. Might be a little bit of something like the kind of accountability that the not so fair sex experiences on a daily basis. But nonetheless, it does sort of further this kind of like princess mentality, right? This Madonna mentality towards women. I know that you don't raise your daughters like that, and I know that you weren't raised like that. You're a hard scrabble female. You're a smart ass. You're a tough gal, right? Country girl, yeehaw, from Joplin, Missouri, Southwest Missouri, right? So like you're of the earth, Camellia. But this does sort of further what I consider to be something of a pathology in these girls that places them a bit up above the rest of us. It kind of
They're pedestalized.
pedestalize them. Yes, your thoughts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that it adds to this false reality and this false perception that women have that they can go through life on their looks alone. And so for girls who don't look like that, and the beauty standard changes. Beauty standards from the 90s are not the beauty standards of the 2000s, and now the current beauty standards, they change. And so, in a girl's formative years, she is looking at that and doing things to herself to try to meet the current thing that is supposed to mean that she is beautiful. And sometimes they do damage to themselves that, 20, 30 years down the road, it's no longer considered beautiful to be that way. And their self-esteem suffers. And I know we kind of make jokes about mental health and self-esteem, and it's one of those things that we've taken to extremes like everything else. And it can, we can be overly concerned about it. But it is also, I think, why we have seen this rise. Like when we talk about this rise with the transgender movement and how many girls are involved in that, way, way, way more girls, because they have been seeing these expectations for them that they can never physically meet. And so they think, I have to, we don't, so Miss USA, Miss Teen USA, I was thinking really our current version of that is the Instagram model, right? So, the girls see all of these Instagram, I should not call them what I was going to call them, but anyway, they see these unrealistic examples on Instagram that are highly photoshopped, right light, right angles, and they think, I can't be like that. I'm not feminine. I'm in the wrong body.
So as everybody knows who's a regular on this show, but there's a bunch of new people watching right now. I'm about to become a father for the first time, and I'm going to have a little girl. And she's going to be what she wants to be. Ultimately, everybody has to make their own individual choices about the lifestyle that they want to leave. It is to lead. It is my job, however, as a father, to encourage her, to help stimulate her, and to bring her up in the world that I believe would be a value-filled, virtuous, moral lifestyle to the greatest extent. And I see that women today are sort of torn between these two extremes, where it's either this entitlement princess, I am the center of the universe view, which a lot of fathers who are still in their daughters' lives, especially if there's the princess mentality, a lot of fathers are responsible for that because they pedestalize their daughters,
Yes.
right, in some ways. And then there's the absent fathers or the not good fathers who their daughters end up going in that direction that you were just talking about a moment ago, right? They get into they're easily coerced into gender politics. They start to identify with a group, and therefore they seek victimhood status amongst this group, and yada yada yada. We all know what could come next. So I find myself in this difficult situation, Camelia, where I consider, how to raise my daughter appropriately and effectively in an environment where it it's either the Madonna or the whore, right? That's kind of like the duality of the world that we live in, which it's highly simplistic, if you will. But culture seems to either push you down one of two paths, either to
Right.
put her on a pedestal. Oh, she's a goddess. She's the Mother Mary. She's a virgin until such and such time, or she is this right wing, or excuse me, left wing Marxist feminist, shaves the side of her head, dyes the rest of it purple, and is confused about her gender. So I'm nervous about how to find the right path for my daughter. There's no good guidebook in the modern age. It used to be, though. It used to be that there was a fairly clear path for women. I don't know what it's like to be a woman, Camelia. Any tips or advice on how to keep my daughter off of the stripper pole, off of the feminist Kool-Aid, and also not have her turn into some kind of garbage beauty queen princess?
So I think the fact that you are thinking about it, that you are cognizant of it, is already you're miles down the road in parenting, right? Because you're aware. And I think probably the most difficult thing in parenting is to strike that balance, because even as parents, we tend to overcompensate. And, how we were parented affects, our parenting. And I think that, sometimes one of the advantages maybe to having children later in life is that you do mature some, hopefully, and you start to look back at your own childhood and you realize that, your parents were flawed too. They made their mistakes too. And so we do the best with what we've been given. And I think that we continue to learn and grow as individuals, and you teach your children early what you learned late. And I think that if that is always in the back of your mind and you're aware of these things, that your parenting will be a natural outcome of that. And your daughter will get these lessons, and instilling in, I think, especially girls, this balance between being feminine, because like the idea of making a girl feminine, they're all like, if you take that too far, you do pedestalize them, right? And so, my little princess, right? Well, you can be daddy's little princess and also, be able to go out into the barnyard and do the hard work and the dirty chores and realize that, you're not all that special, because we all need a dose of you're not all that special. Keep us humble. So I think that, that keeping that balance of, instilling those qualities of kindness and consideration for others, along with self-sufficiency, I think it works out in the end.
Yeah, it's fascinating because you'll see a lot of these right-wing or conservative fathers, and they pedestalize their daughters, and then they send them off to these universities and give them up over to these Marxist professors. And then we see all these videos and pictures and TikToks of these girls who come back after being at university for a year, and they have just dramatically changed. So it must be challenging for being a dad, raising a daughter and thinking, should I send my daughter to college? It doesn't seem like such a good idea, but if she can't find a man who will love her and take care of her and protect her, she's going to need to be able to fend for herself and be able to take care of herself. But if I send her into the clutches of the commies, then she might come back hating me. And this is to be difficult decisions. Thankfully, I don't have to make them for at least 18 years, but still.
Well, and I think that that's where our education system has come in and played such a huge role of where we are now as a society. And we have, put children into these buildings with, locked into rooms with kids their own age for 8 days out, or 8 hours out of the day, 5 days a week, for the majority of the year. And then, we expect to, like, I think most parents, just because that became the norm, they kind of checked out of, they trusted that education system to, teach their children well and to instill what they assumed to be shared values and ideals. This is one of the things that I touch on in the piece that I wrote. is that this idea that as a nation, we have these shared values and ideals. And that's what, so we can trust, other people to also teach our children well, kind of that 1950s, ideal of, your neighbors being able to keep an eye out for your kids and, to discipline them when they needed it, if they were acting up, and, take care of them too at the same time. And we're not there anymore, right? I do think that was, for all the times I make fun of the ideal of the 50s, I do think that was a reality that we don't see as much anymore. And so I think that for parents, it is more difficult than ever, even in that you have to be so aware and so present, and you can't just assume that you can send your child off to school and know that they will be getting taught the things that align with what you believe.
Speaking of Camellia Peterson right now, Andy Opperman over in the chat says, if you send your sons to Caesar, do not be surprised when they come back as Romans.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Bonnie Bauckham. Yeah, that's right.
Another challenge that Stephanie and I are going to face is, being that, we are a secular couple, we don't have the sort of ready bake oven kind of morality kit to place over our kids, to just follow the example that our parents set for ourselves, to sort of say, all right, morality and virtue comes from our religious community. Listen to your church leaders and your elders and the deacons about and go to Sunday school and go to vacation Bible school to learn about morality and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Stephanie and I have to come up with our own value system in order to instill virtue in our child that isn't going to come from a higher authority. We don't get to claim higher authority because obviously that's not where our belief system stems from. So there's another whole set of challenges, Camellia. I'm scared.
Well, sure. Here's the thing, though. Like, when you look at the church, this is the mistake, even with the church, that parents have made, is even this idea that you can farm that out to the church to instill those values in your child, because that's not the church's job. The church's job is there to support you in the lifestyle that you have chosen. But
so if you send your kids to Muhammad, don't be surprised if they come back as Muhammadan Muslims.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't know that you have to come up with an origin for your values and your principles. I think you live those, wherever you have gathered those from, and it's a combination of places, right? The values that I live on have come from my background in Christianity. They've come from the principles of Stoicism. There are things that I pull from Buddhism that I highly value. I mean, there are lots of places that you can pull the tenets that you live your life by. And you teach those children by living. You teach your children those by living them.
So we send our kids to Buddha and they come back Buddhists. Camellia Peterson, you rock. We love having you on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It was great to see you again. Have a wonderful day. Anything else you want to say real quick before we go?
No, have a great day, everyone.
Thanks very much, Camellia. Have a wonderful day. We'll give her a round of applause. Yes, we see CJ, that's what I call her, on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 a.m. Central Time. So if you like Camellia, make sure you come back in those regular times. The Wake Up America show is brought to you in part, not just from the generosity of viewers and listeners like yourself, but we do occasionally get a sponsor on the Wake Up America show. God bless them. We need them. Got a baby on the way. The Preserve Gold team is interested in helping you to find out more about how to invest in precious metals, gold and silver. If you're like me and you're concerned about the rise of central bank digital currencies, then ask yourself if gold and silver might be right for you. The team over at Preserve Gold has a free gold and silver information packet that they will send you right now if you grab your mobile device and text the word Liberty to 50505. That's 50505. Text the word Liberty, and our friends at Preserve Gold will send you a free gold and silver information packet. They'll also get you started with a $500 account credit ready to use at any time. But there's no high pressure sales tactics. They just want to ensure that you've got all the information that you need to find out how to invest in precious metals. They'll answer any question that you might have. Just text the word Liberty to 50505. And every time you do text the word Liberty to 50505, a new show gets launched on the Wake Up America Shows Network. The Wake Up America Show brought to you in part by our friends over at Preserve Gold. It's the time now to invest in your financial security. Make sure that gold and silver are a part of your cornerstone of your portfolio by texting the word Liberty to 50505. Thank you to our friends at Preserve Gold. We appreciate you very much for investing in the Wake Up America show and investing in the financial security of all of our friends who watch the show and who decided to text the word Liberty to 50505. All right. Well, I don't see Tony Lavasco just yet, but he might be milling around outside. I'm going to go looking for him. We're going to talk to him about the end of the Missouri legislative session and his priorities. Did he get the brass knuckles across the finish line? Damn it, Tony. I want brass knuckles. We'll be right back with Tony Lavasco on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
We are looking at celebrities with libertarian instincts. Today, we examine Vince Vaughn, a big fan of Ron Paul, who interviewed about libertarianism with Playboy. Vince Vaughn, known for his acting, shares his libertarian views in a recent Playboy interview. He supports the Constitution and believes in a republic. Vaughn takes about Ron Paul, who woke a lot of people up to the fact that government can't handle everything for you, his distrust of centralized power, and his preference for a system where people are left alone, unless they commit fraud or physical force or take someone's property. So we should have lawyers running the country? Interviewer David Hochman asks in response. Laws and courts are important, Vaughn explains. Otherwise, you can't leave your house because you have to protect your stuff. Vaughn admires Ron Paul for his role in enlightening people about governmental limitations and the dangers of centralized power. I have gotten to know Rand through Ron, and I have found him to be very consistent on a lot of the issues where liberty is concerned, and liked him very much, Vaughn said. There are some things I wasn't totally understanding of regarding Rand Paul's politics, but he is the candidate that is currently running that I am most sort of aligned with in sort of his thoughts and philosophies. Discussing gun ownership, Vaughn connects it to the necessity of self-protection and property rights. Vaughn dismisses the idea of running for office, criticizing the influence of money in politics and the potential for corruption. Vaughn said in his interview with Playboy that, "You have to understand that America today is not capitalistic. The problem is corporatism. The government has too much authority, and it's dangerous. It stifles productivity and freedom and prosperity and peace. I find most people nowadays are more complacent or accepting that the government can successfully do everything for us. It can't. He critiques the current system, highlighting the problems of corporatism over true capitalism, where the government wields excessive power. Vaughn points out that government overreach stifles productivity, freedom, prosperity, and peace. He expresses concern that Americans are becoming too complacent with governmental control over their lives. Vaughn passionately opposes the Patriot Act and the government's involvement in undeclared wars and stripping away personal liberties. Vaughn said the Patriot Act? Let's get rid of it. Undeclared wars, doing away with personal liberties. Let's understand how that has worked out historically to see that it has led to some horrible things. Once our personal liberties are gone, when an American citizen can be pulled out of his house and detained for 6 months without a trial, where is our country? Once those rights are gone, how do you get them back? Once the government is allowed to listen to you, how do you get that privacy back? He warns of the dangers of losing personal liberties, referencing historical outcomes when governments overpower their citizens. Vaughn fears the irreversible loss of privacy and rights once the government can detain citizens without trial or invade personal privacy. Vaughn urges understanding and action against government policies that infringe on individual freedoms and privacy. My thing isn't necessarily to try and get out there and try to get people to join the movement, he said. I find it important to be consistent with what your truth is and to be direct about that in conversations. He said it's gotten him some praise on the down low in Hollywood. I have people come up to me because I have spoken about it, and they are always like, hush, hush, like, I am so glad you said something. I can't say anything, but I am with you. When pressed on whether libertarians should do more in pop culture to argue their cause, Vaughn said he isn't out to push his beliefs through projects. He calls for vigilance against government overreach, emphasizing the historical lessons and the importance of maintaining personal liberties. Vince Vaughn is one of the highest profile libertarians in Hollywood and the world.
Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Glad and thankful to have you here. We got about 1,000 people watching us live amongst the many platforms. Of course, Rumble is the biggest audience. Good morning, Rumblers. Thanks for joining us here live today. Don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to the channel if it's your first time joining us. If you hit that follow button over on Rumble, you'll be able to find us easily tomorrow morning because we do a show 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. You could just spend all your time watching the Wake Up America show. We'd love it if you join us regularly. Of course, if you just saw that interview with Camellia Peterson over there and you say to yourself, this is some good stuff, I definitely want to hear more from these guys, click that follow button before you leave today, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Where else are going to get great interviews like my next guest joining us live and in studio, Missouri State Representative Tony Lavasco. What's up, Tony?
How you doing?
Oh, I should probably turn your microphone on. Hey, how you going? Nice to see you, bud. Thanks for coming in. You're a little pink-cheeked there, Tony. Did you make it?
Yeah, I learned a valuable lesson this morning, and that's carry change with you in Jefferson City, because there was no free parking anywhere near your studio. So I was several blocks away and running to just barely make it, so I'm catching up.
Yes, we are in a real studio, by the way. This is real. One of my friends asked me, he's like, I thought that was like a green screen thing. No, but this is real. We are in a real actual studio here, so it's good to see you, Tony. Thanks so much for coming on the show today. Last week of the Missouri legislative session, I guess IP reform is the big news this year. Initiative petition. When you say IP to libertarians, we're like, oh, are you talking about,
patents,
intellectual property? Yeah. No, which we love, but most people are bored by. What's the status of the initiative petition reforms? What is initiative petition reform?
So let's start with the simple concept. There's two ways that Missouri's constitution can be modified. Either through a ballot issue that is put to the voters by the legislature, or what's called an initiative petition, which is where people gather signatures, and if they get a sufficient number of signatures, their question gets asked to the voters on the ballot. Unfortunately, the threshold for changing the Constitution is very low. It's basically 50% of the people who vote plus one. That's pretty easy when you consider the fact that the only real barrier to actually asking that question is the difficulty of collecting those signatures, which anyone that's well-funded tends to have the ability to do. So what we've seen is that various out-of-state groups, various liberal groups, will decide that they don't like what the legislature is doing, or they would like to do something that's in their own interest, and they will finance a campaign to get their question on the ballot, thus putting something in our Constitution that we can't modify when they get it wrong. Initiative petition reform is an attempt to make sure that anything that makes it into our Constitution meets a certain threshold of general acceptedness by the voters, so it's not the result of just a quick money campaign to get something done.
Okay. So if you want to get something on the ballot for voters to vote on in Missouri, you don't really need to meet that high of a threshold. At the moment, the legislature is considering increasing the threshold in order to get something on the ballot. Is that correct?
Not specifically. So most folks, like myself, believe that it should be fairly easy to ask the question. What should be difficult is to get the consensus to actually get a yes. And so if anyone wants to just collect the signatures, get their question on the ballot, as long as they meet the current threshold, we're generally fine with that. The issue is it being so simple for it to actually become part of the Constitution. So what the measure that the legislature is currently considering would make it where you would need to get 50% plus one of the overall voting block, but you'd also have to do so in the majority of the congressional districts. And the idea behind that is that you can't just have a couple of cities, St. Louis and Kansas City typically, that have the bulk of the voters deciding for the rest of the state.
Okay. The Missouri legislature was not able to pass legalization of marijuana here in the state of Missouri. And, there was a whole, kind of Baptist and bootleggers coalition and people who were against it. I understand that. But the people of Missouri put it on the ballot and passed it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't great. It had lots of problems. But it was... Did you voted for that? Did you vote?
I did not.
You did not. Okay. Because of the way that they passed it?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, not so much the fact that it was an initiative. The fact that, like most initiatives, it just wasn't drafted well. Mm-hmm. The reality is the legislative process is difficult for a reason. Things need to be vetted. You need to make sure that you get all the unintended consequences. And more specifically, you make sure that we're not putting something in our foundational document that's just designed to benefit a particular person or industry. The marijuana provision that was passed through initiative petition sets up this draconian licensing scheme that basically locks in existing players, makes it very, very difficult for new people to enter the market. It's basically impossible to get a marijuana cultivation or a sales license under the current scheme.
Yeah. My reason for voting for it was the criminal justice side of things, right? So for too long, people have been locked up for engaging in harmless activities. And I have no faith in the Missouri legislature that you all are going to do your jobs and that you'll be able to pass something like that. Because here's the thing, there are representatives that I speak to that want to vote for it, but they didn't because they feared reelection.
Sure.
So underneath that circumstance or that scenario, I can't say I'm going to vote against it because it's an imperfect bill. You all were going to pass an imperfect bill yourselves.
Well, I think you're right. I think we weren't going to pass the bill at all. We tried that. Representative Ron Hicks had a pretty decent bill that he crafted. Couldn't get the support to bring it to the floor, even in the House. The reality is there is a place for the initiatives when the legislature is being not responsive. The problem is it's very much geared towards folks setting in things for themselves. It's not designed to be a collaborative process. And more specifically, it's not well vetted. We had a proposal a few years back, the last marijuana proposal that did fail, that would have actually given one particular guy complete authority over the program. It actually named him in the Missouri Constitution, or it would have had it passed. Obviously, we can't have that.
So the fear now this year is the abortion question, right? The left is trying to put the legalization of abortion on the ballot. And there is a sincere concern by conservatives that that's going to make it to the ballot for this fall.
Oh, it'll make it to the ballot. The question, of course, is whether it will pass or not. I think the left is already celebrating the likely victory. I think the reality is Missouri is still a pro-life state. I think people will look at that very closely. I don't think it's going to be a blowout in either direction, but I think we can defeat it.
But if we can't, then Missouri would then constitutionally be a pro-choice state.
Absolutely, and that would be very difficult for the legislature to reverse because we'd actually have to ask the people another question on the ballot and then have them reverse it themselves. And people are not typical to vote against themselves.
No, that's deeply concerning. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I'm Austin Peterson. We're glad and thankful to have you here. My sweaty and out-of-breath friend is Missouri State Representative Tony Lavasco, joining us live on the set for the very last week of the legislative session. So initiative petition reform is the big one this week. Anything else anything good that might get passed this week?
Maybe. There's quite a few good things that are kind of in the hopper. The Senate Democrats are still filibustering the IP reform. So the real question is when that gets wrapped up, how it gets wrapped up, and if the Senate sticks around long enough to actually pass any other bills. If they do, we've got quite a bit of things that are close to making it across the finish line that I think are worthy of mention. We've got something that would help make it easier for property owners to get rid of squatters. That's something that's been a big issue in the news the last 6 months or so. We've got a good piece of legislation there. I think Representative Phil Amato had that one. We've got a pretty cool provision that I've helped support for the last few years by Representative Jim Murphy that would allow people to have chickens in their backyards, regardless of what their locality or HOA says. I think that's great legislation. And then we've got smattering of minor tax cuts, things like that, little quick fixes for a variety of different things. I've got a few pieces of legislation that may still technically make it. Probably not, given the amount of time left, but we're hoping they're keep working.
Probably not going to get any brass knuckles this year,
probably
unfortunately. Well, okay, we appreciate you joining us and talking about these things. The Missouri Republican convention convened last week on Saturday in Springfield. I had the chance to go, and it was a fascinating experience because the grassroots Republicans threw out the kind of the establishment Missouri Republican Party and sent a bunch of kind of pro-Trump, pro-grassroots type people. One guy was even who got elected as the Republican National Committeeman was a guy who came in during the Ron Paul era back in 2012. And as soon as I heard that guy was running, I was like, oh, that's the guy I'm voting for sure. So it was exciting to see. And then there was the platform fight that didn't get to happen because it started so late. So Ben Baker, our friend from Southwest Missouri, rock solid conservative. I kind of call him the Ted Cruz of Missouri, and you're like the Rand Paul of Missouri. But the grassroots are mad at him because he did a quorum call to end the convention before those grassroots who had taken over the convention we're able to pass a bunch of amendments, stuff that you and I probably be a little squirrely on, like school choice stuff, right?
Anti-school choice,
Yeah,
specifically, right.
anti-school choice stuff, chemtrail stuff,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
kind of embarrassing kind of stuff. We don't want to send, be like, it's a national convention. Hey guys, we're a bunch of retards out here in Missouri, right? So the grassroots won the battles that they wanted to win, that we needed to win. We lost the battles that we needed them to lose in some sense, right? It's kind of an experiment in why we're not a democracy, thank God. But now there's like a lot of grassroots. They're really mad at Ben Baker, right? They kind of turned on.
Yeah, God forbid we have a quorum. That's it's totally antithetical to freedom, right? Look, I get it. People are frustrated. They came a long way to get their voice heard. The reality is you have procedure, you have Robert's rules for a reason. You cannot have a meeting run by mob rule, regardless of who controls the mob or how much you might like what they're working on. I don't think that Ben did anything wrong. The reality is that process was kind of mismanaged. There was some issues as far as getting started on time. I think that were legitimate concerns that people had. But you got to have quorum. You got to follow the rules and procedures. The reality is, typically speaking, the reason that grassroots groups have not tended to do well in those types of environments is that they're just not well educated on the process compared to the establishment.
Yeah, they didn't know what a quorum was. They're like, what is this quorum? It's voodoo. It's witchcraft, right? And it's like, no, you got to learn the process here.
You got to play the rules of the game that you're operating in, whether or not you're the one who came up with the game.
I did find it ironic, though, that like this is typically the crowd who is always beating the door down. We are not a democracy. This is America's a republic. And then when the will of the majority was overthrown by one person who knew the rules and called a quorum, they all lost. They're like, how dare he?
Will the people,
right? Will of the people, will of the people, right? I was just kind of like, no, not so much, right? The Republican governor's primary is going to be brutal, man. We've got Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, Bill Eigel, Senator Bill Eigel, and Jay Ashcroft. Now, you don't have to say who you're supporting if you don't want to. I get it. But is it anyone but Kehoe?
I would say at this juncture, I think all three of them would do a good job compared to what we've got in the last several years. Mike Parson's a good guy, but I think he has demonstrated that his head is in a different spot than most of the legislature when it comes to policy.
Kind of squishy.
I definitely have a preference there. We'll probably be announcing that later in the summer.
Oh, you're going to make an announcement. You're
quite likely, yeah. The reality is that process doesn't need to be a bloodbath. All three of those guys are decent people. We can have elections for important roles and still respect each other, still have an actual campaign about issues. I'd like to keep it that way. Some folks have unfortunately not so far. Hoping we can turn the corner and have a respectful campaign.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that Mike Kehoe has said that I like. The tax hike stuff. I can't get over that, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the fiscal conservatism is an important part of what makes us Republicans, and I feel like we shouldn't be compromising on those things. If you want more money for the roads, we have a massive budget. Take it from somewhere else. There's plenty of money here.
Absolutely. And apparently MoDOT stands appropriated. We don't even need to give them any money. They can just take it, whatever they want from their taxes that they already collected, the gas tax and whatnot, and spend it on whatever they want, according to the Missouri Supreme Court. So, the reality is they are well equipped to fix the roads. The state government is doing just fine when it comes to money. We just passed another record large budget last week. I voted against it, as I have in the past. We need to cut spending, and we absolutely don't need to be raising taxes.
There is a spicy Latina out in St. Louis who is running for the Jay Ashcroft Secretary of State job. She does these videos of her running and like being angry in the camera, and she talks about MAGA, and she's endorsed by Florida Republican Matt Gaetz, and she's getting a lot of attention online for burning books about transgender kids or something. I don't know. But is that your pick for Secretary of State? I always vote for my Secretary of State on like looks and like how angry they are.
I don't actually make my selection when I vote based on that. If I voted based on who was the angriest, I would imagine we'd have quite a few different people in office. I think she's got an interesting campaign. I certainly think she's excellent at marketing. She doesn't have any real money to speak of. She doesn't have a real volunteer base. I think the reality is she's not going to be able to run statewide.
You mean they're not pouring cash into her campaign, Tony? What? what? Come on.
You know, I think people underestimate how much it really takes to run statewide. I mean, it's hard to run a state rep district, which is 39,000 people. I can't imagine 7 million Missourians having to vote for me. That's a just whole different level.
Yeah, I raised $650,000 in my U.S. Senate run, and that was a drop in the bucket compared to what the actual people who won. It was like they were raising like $6 million, $8 million, $10 million in order to run statewide here in Missouri. So $650,000 will get you about 55,000 votes in a primary where you need about 160,000 votes. So, so about 3 times more votes than you need right there. So I guess probably to run in Missouri on a statewide level, you probably need at minimum like $1.5 million.
Yeah, I'd probably
2
agree with
million,
that,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get around that if you're really savvy with the media, and certainly Ms. Gomez is, but I think you need some money as well.
Do you know who you are going to vote for in the Secretary of State primary?
I do. Again, we'll talk about that down the line. I've got several friends in that race. That's a sticky situation, but yeah, I have made it to mine.
So it's not the spicy Latina.
We actually haven't met.
Oh, really? Okay, well, that's a shame. So there are a lot of things at stake in the election this fall. When it comes to Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, is it a no-brainer for you to support Trump?
You know, I think the issue there is we cannot have another 4 years of Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether you like Trump or not, there really isn't a choice there. Maybe we'll see a third party candidate of some kind, get some fire. I haven't seen anybody yet that is particularly appealing.
Brainworm guy.
Right. Yeah, it's not going to be RFK. Sorry, guys. That's actually an interesting thing. I guess he and Trump are going to be at the LNC convention in a few weeks. That was not something I would have had on my bingo card.
What did you think about that when they announced Donald Trump is going to speak?
I would have never guessed that. I think it's going to be fantastic for pretty much everybody involved in that situation. I think RFK is going to get a lot of press he wouldn't have. I think the LNC is going to get a lot of press they wouldn't have. And I think it shows that Donald Trump is open-minded and willing to approach voters that wouldn't normally consider him. So I think that's a good look for him.
You think Donald Trump's going to get a lot of Libertarian Party votes this year?
I think so, yeah.
That's a big deal. So it's good for Trump. It's bad for the LP.
I don't think so. I think anytime you can get someone with Trump's caliber on your stage and eyeballs on your convention and your message, I think that's positive, even if it's not your guy that they're talking about.
Okay. Tony Lovasco, anything else you want to share with our listeners before we let you go?
I've got a tough primary coming up here in August. I'd appreciate any help that anyone's willing to provide. You can go to my website at tonylovasco.com or a shorter website, helptony.com.
There you go, helptony.com. He's the Rand Paul of Missouri, Tony Lovasco. He ran and he sweated his way here like an angry Latina to get to the Wake Up America show. So visit helptony.com. Give him a round of applause and give him your money at helptony.com. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Austin.
Have a good one. Thanks so much for watching the Wake Up America show. It's time for us to say goodbye to all our family. We appreciate you very much for watching today. We hope that you'll come back and join us again tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Central Time right here. Click that follow button. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks so much for unlocking that bonus content. Enjoy one more time. Vince Vaughn, the Libertarian from Hollywood. Enjoy that. And tomorrow we'll do it all over again with a brand new celebrity. This week's theme, Libertarians in Hollywood. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Enjoy the show. Hope you enjoyed the show. Have a great day, great week on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. All right, let's mute those.
We are looking at celebrities with libertarian instincts. Today we examine Vince Vaughn, a big fan of Ron Paul, who interviewed about libertarianism with Playboy. Vince Vaughn, known for his acting, shares his libertarian views in a recent Playboy interview. He supports the Constitution and believes in a republic. Vaughn takes about Ron Paul, who woke a lot of people up to the fact that government can't handle everything for you, his distrust of centralized power, and his preference for a system where people are left alone, unless they commit fraud or physical force or take someone's property. So we should have lawyers running the country? Interviewer David Hochman asks in response. Laws and courts are important, Vaughn explains. Otherwise, you can't leave your house because you have to protect your stuff. Vaughn admires Ron Paul for his role in enlightening people about governmental limitations and the dangers of centralized power. I have gotten to know Rand through Ron, and I have found him to be very consistent on a lot of the issues where liberty is concerned, and liked him very much, Vaughn said. There are some things I wasn't totally understanding of regarding Rand Paul's politics, but he is the candidate that is currently running that I am most sort of aligned with in sort of his thoughts and philosophies. Discussing gun ownership, Vaughn connects it to the necessity of self-protection and property rights. Vaughn dismisses the idea of running for office, criticizing the influence of money in politics and the potential for corruption. Vaughn said in his interview with Playboy that, "You have to understand that America today is not capitalistic. The problem is corporatism. The government has too much authority, and it's dangerous. It stifles productivity and freedom and prosperity and peace. I find most people nowadays are more complacent or accepting that the government can successfully do everything for us. It can't. He critiques the current system, highlighting the problems of corporatism over true capitalism, where the government wields excessive power. Vaughn points out that government overreach stifles productivity, freedom, prosperity, and peace. He expresses concern that Americans are becoming too complacent with governmental control over their lives. Vaughn passionately opposes the Patriot Act and the government's involvement in undeclared wars and stripping away personal liberties.
Expanse of time, a year might seem